Welcome, everyone. This is author Anne, author of Hope, Loss, and Courage. And today I have a very special guest. His name is Philip Parrish, and he has a lot of experience and education on writing and creative writing and editing. And so today is not about me, it is about Phil. So, Phil, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. I'm really happy to be here and just have a conversation about how to get started writing and kind of my journey as a writer and kind of where I am and where I've come from. So I'm gonna share my screen and show you a little bit about myself here. So I'm originally from Oklahoma, grew up there through high school, and then came to Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, where I did my undergrad in English and secondary education.
Okay.
And I stayed there in St. Louis after I graduated college and taught for about 4 years at a local high school. Taught English there. Everything from AP language to the freshman composition course, and really enjoyed that. But after um, my third full year, I taught a half semester at the very beginning because I was taking over for a teacher who was out. So after my third full year, I decided that I'd like to take a break from teaching and explore kind of opportunities in writing. I've always loved reading and loved writing, and felt yeah, just empowered by being able to write and share my stories, share other people's stories, and had always been a little nervous to actually, try to start that and be open about, hey, I want to be a writer in some way. But I think I finally got to that point where I was like, I gotta try it at least. I'll always regret it if I don't. So I uh,
Yeah.
decided on grad school as kind of my way to explore that. And I was lucky that I, kind of could do that and just kind of take a break from teaching. So I started exploring grad schools, and one that was presented to me pretty quickly was University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. I have some good friends up here that I will be introducing in a second. And so I applied, and that was the first big step of just, admitting to myself and others that I'm applying for a creative writing program, and kind of leaving it up to an admissions person and the English faculty to tell me whether or not I should be let in. And so that was a big step of just like submitting some of my work and as part of the application process, not just to friends, not just to a class for peer review, but to people who actually are going to have a say on whether or not I get to go to this school. And I was very grateful to be accepted. And so I moved up
That's
here
awesome.
in June of 2020, and I'm staying with my friends up here, and am now in my second semester of the creative writing program for prose. And I love Milwaukee, the city. I love being up here, and I really do love UWM. It's been a great fit for me, and the professors and fellow students have just, yeah, been fantastic. So that's kind of how I got to be in grad school, and took the plunge to start my creative writing journey. So a little bit more about me. In each place that I've lived, I feel like I have different families. So this
Oh,
is my
great.
Oklahoma family. These are my parents on the left here, and then this is at my twin sister's wedding, which happened in September of 2020. So she just got married last year. So that's
Oh,
her and
that's
my
beautiful.
brother-in-law in the middle, and then my older sister on the far right, next to me. So got two sisters and now a brother-in-law as well. So
Good looking
um,
family.
yeah, right. And it's, yeah, it was really fun to be a part of that. And
Oh, that's neat.
yeah, and so when I moved up to St. Louis, I obviously made a lot of friends in college, and through that, after college, a lot of us were able to stay in touch, and so this is who I consider to be my St. Louis family. Some of them aren't from college, but we've kind of grown as we've as a lot of them have gotten married and had kids, even as you can see on the right. But every
Yeah.
year we try to have a couple of times where we go camping together and get to hang out and spend the weekend together. So
Oh, I
it's
bet
my
that's an awesome time just
yeah.
to think about the memories and make a few new ones.
Yeah, it's very special. And then my Milwaukee family is Curtis and Caitlin, Peyton, and we've as I'll share in a little bit, we go way back, but I've known them both for quite a while, but am really really grateful for the opportunity to get to renew that relationship and deepen that in different ways. So this picture is us at Christmas. Got to spend Christmas with them, which was a blessing. And Curtis has gotten us all into kayaking. And I don't know if you
Yes.
recognize that person there in the background.
Oh, is that me?
That is you.
Good
uh,
mention our kayak trip because that was so much fun.
yeah, it was lots of fun. So that's been a fun part of Milwaukee life. Not now, obviously, when there's a couple feet of snow on the ground. That's going to stay until stay until spring, and then we have two dogs as well, Texas and Bo, and they're sweethearts, and I love getting to cuddle with them. And as I said, I've had the fortune to know Curtis and Caitlin for a long time. I don't know if you know this, Anne, but Curtis and I actually got baptized on the same day when we were
No.
we were in college. Yeah, so this is from Curtis's
Oh,
baptism.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in the evening, I got baptized at the church I was going to in the morning that same day, and he got baptized in the evening. So we got to attend each other's baptisms.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then this picture up top is from about 8 years ago in 2012, where Caitlin and I were coaching a volleyball team together, and this is before Curtis is they're dating at the time, but
I see.
Curtis had not proposed yet. He was going to do that in the winter of 2012 that year.
So you all are big athletes too, huh?
We are, yep, we love playing volleyball, all of us, and kayaking, and then yeah, this is a more recent picture. So
That's
it's been
great.
fun to get to do that. And here's a little bit more kind of honing in on my literature and reading and writing joys. So I'm a big Harry Potter nerd and love hosting Harry Potter trivia nights. So this is from a trivia night a couple years ago, that I planned and also won.
Ah, yay.
So that was super fun. We even made a house cup that the winners of the trivia night got to have, and I have
Oh,
hosted one up here. And these are just some of the things that I've been reading recently, or I'm currently reading. So
oh,
I've
okay,
really
good.
found interesting, and again, and I'll talk more about this, but just um, authors and books that have really made me think about writing and sort of the different ways to tell a story. So Terry Pratchett, he's most known for the Discworld series. But I just recently read a book by him called Nation, which is geared more towards young adults, but a really, really interesting kind of mix of really funny, comedic kind of situations and moments, but also like really, really serious kind of content. I
Oh,
also
I
read
think I'd
Mastering.
like that.
Oh yeah, it's great, and that's that's kind of his style, and I have a whole box of his stuff that I've just kind of collected on the recommendation of some of my friends, that I, eventually need to work through. So I've got it there, but he's on my reading list. And then Master and Commander, by Patrick O'Brien, which got made into a movie a couple years back. But I picked this one up because I just kept on hearing about other authors who referenced Patrick O'Brien as an
Oh,
influence, and so I was like, well, Neil Gaiman, was one who said he thought Patrick O'Brien in his series of the Aubrey Maturin series, which is what the Master and Commander is the first book of, um, was like really influential for him. And there were just a couple of other authors that I was reading like author interviews and stuff, and they just kept on talking about him. And I was like, well, I need to pick him up and see what the deal is. So um, I'm also rereading through Lord of the Rings right now, and very much enjoying that. And Also, when I don't have time to read a bunch of Lord of the Rings, there's this short story writer named Ted Chiang who's just fantastic. He's a science fiction short story writer, but he has two
oh,
collections out right now. Stories of Your Life, which actually is the basis for the movie Arrival, which came out a while ago, with
okay.
Amy Adams. Um, and Exhalation, which is his most recent work, and like every short story that he writes is just like pure gold. And so he's fantastic, and a modern author who's working right now and creating right now, who I just really look up to as a short story writer, particularly. And then another fantasy series that I'm slowly working through is Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, which I'll reference again a couple times because I'm learning a lot from him, as a fantasy writer, as I look at his work and think about like how did he write 14 books?
Yeah.
uh, th- thir- 13. He passed away before he could finish his 14th, and as someone
Well,
had
any
kind
more than one or two seems
of
sometimes
right.
seems a little overwhelming.
So it's been interesting to read his books, especially recently as I've gotten into creative writing and pursued that more seriously, to really read him as a writer, and think about some of the some of the things that like he does, and that's helped me. So
Well, I'm
and then
going to
my
add a
last,
few of those to my list
yeah,
today.
definitely. And then here you mentioned, yeah, we are an athletic family, so these are the
Yes.
things I like to do when I'm not reading or writing: kayaking when it's warmer out. Also enjoy rock climbing, and I used to run a lot more than I do now, but still, if there's a race that some friends are training for, I'll do that. But my first love has always been volleyball. That's how Kate and I connected a long time ago as well, and coaching volleyball, playing volleyball.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I haven't had the opportunity to really get into this during COVID and in Milwaukee, but I also just really enjoy acting. I had the opportunity to do that when I was in college, with my theater program there, and would love to continue to do that as it allows, as COVID restrictions allow. And then just exploring the city. Milwaukee's a great city, and so just finding all these little coffee shops and breweries, of course, and just the nature and the culture and everything has just been really really fun to get to go out and explore the city. So those are kind of my interests outside of the reading writing world. So
Well, you all have to tell me when uh, things relax after COVID if you're going to be in a play or a production.
absolutely.
I will drive to come
Oh.
see you. Just looking at that picture there, whether it appears that you've got a red feather, or is that fire coming out of your
It's
head?
it's a red feather. That's from the complete works of Shakespeare abridged revised, which I was in college, which is it's a three-man acting troupe that created it, that they basically they give synopses of every Shakespeare play, but in this like super comedic, just kind of oddball slapstick way. So this is me playing Hamlet at the very end, And we do, we actually, the very end is we do Hamlet backwards, and that was really hard to memorize.
Oh my God,
But an abridged version, and then
that's
the
fun.
other one on the left is me in a play called Rumors as well. So yeah, I would love
Great.
to do some community theater up here if I can, do that. So maybe after grad school, particularly, once
Right.
I have a little bit more time, and hopefully after COVID restrictions are less. So
Well,
yeah,
good.
that's about did I miss anything, or any other things that about me that
No,
I didn't cover?
I think that was wonderful, and I like how you presented it with all the pictures because people love pictures.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Well, thanks. Yeah,
yeah.
it's to get a little bit to share about that, and I'm sure and I know from what you've produced as a writer, your life experience definitely comes into play, and
Oh yes.
really you got to embrace that and just recognize that you know you got to go live life to write about it. So it's important to.
Exactly, and that's a really good point, Phil. I think there's a story in everyone. And even if your goal is not to actually become a published writer, just through several times, the the actual writing process is so healing.
Mm,
That's what I have found. Not only um, you may end up creating a book or a story or take something that you've done and I heard you talk about fantasy writing, turn it into something like that.
mm-hmm,
I think that's one of my first questions is how do you encourage people or how did you encourage yourself? Like it took a jump of faith to apply for
mm-hmm,
the master's program. And, that's a lot of the things what we have to do. We have to make that first jump
mm-hmm.
and get started. So, what would you like to say about that?
Yeah. I really like what you said about like there's a personal aspect to why we write, and I think at some point like that just has to become more important than the fear or anticipated shame of showing other people your writing. And it's different for everybody. For me, I wanted to, I've always, even before I really, began to think of myself as a writer, I've always had stories in my head, or written stuff down of like, oh, I'd love to, think about writing this. And a long time ago, I feel like we also each have a story like this. When I was in early elementary school, I remember, doing what's your future career, and I chose author a long time ago, but then that dream like died somewhere in there, and it wasn't anything necessarily that happened in my life that discouraged me from that, but just ultimately the kind of safety and comfort of saying I'm not taking it seriously. Because whenever you decide that you're going to take anything seriously, there's
Right.
always the risk of failure, the risk of people sort of, saying, oh, that's not worth your time, or you're not going to succeed. And a lot of that is self-perceived. I think that's maybe the first thing I would say is the narrative in your head that people
Yes.
when you decide to come out as a writer, so to
Yeah.
speak, of how people are going to receive that is probably vastly over exaggerated. And
Right.
so just to recognize that a lot of that fear is really self-imposed, um,
Hmm.
and that you actually probably have some support. But then I think the second thing is to go and kind of find a couple of people that are going to be safe. So I was
Hmm.
really fortunate when I was teaching. There were a couple of teachers that I was really close to, and we started a writing group. That met
Oh,
monthly,
that's
and
interesting.
Yeah, and that was a really safe place. I still send my stories to them, and they still, email me back with encouragement and stuff. So, they were the first people I told that I was going to pursue a creative writing degree, they were the first ones because I knew they would be supportive of it.
Right.
So there's, again, there's people in everyone's life, where kind of no matter what you do, they're gonna support you, unless it's harmful to yourself,
Right.
um, so to find those people and get them on your side first. So just in, on the off chance that someone is, rude and takes your intention lightly or humorously and says, oh, like, you're not going to survive doing that, like, you can kind of have that background of support. And then, yeah, you just got to decide. For me, it was um, recognizing that if I don't do this now, there's always going to be something in the back of my head that's going to wonder
Right.
if if this was really something that I could do. And that, again, that became uh, more important to me to figure that out,
Hmm.
um, than than keeping my ego safe. you know
Exactly. Exactly.
so
I think
it's a
the
personal process for everybody, but that's
right.
my journey.
Well, and I think there's a fear of failure for all of us. It could be someone talking bad about us. It could be a critic reading your things, or it could be being shunned by friends. Uh, but I think you're right. The older you get, you're like, well, if I don't do this now, you never know, and
Hmm.
you've got to take the leap of faith and just know that really the only person you have to worry about impressing is God.
Mm.
Everybody else is, you know, really doesn't matter what they
Yeah,
think. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, that was a big component. Is I was also going through, like, just learning that and relearning that, I guess. That's a that I feel like that's a lesson that we relearn a lot of times in our
yes,
lives, is that, that the what other people think doesn't really matter, and we have the consideration and affection and support of a heavenly Father. And as I was processing through, I had a lot of feelings of obligation around teaching, and quitting teaching. Really, that
wow,
was probably the biggest roadblock for me, because
that was tough.
it's a noble profession. It's a needed profession, and I felt like it would be selfish for
Oh,
me to go and pursue a degree where, maybe I would be able to be paid for writing, and that somehow God would not be pleased with that.
right.
And just really realizing that, like, again, that was a self-imposed obligation.
Mm-hmm.
um I, God's pleasure with me and satisfaction with me is not founded in the job I choose,
God,
but in the work and death and resurrection of Jesus, and that I have the freedom in him, to pursue any career. And yeah, and there are certainly careers I feel like that I'm more called to than others, and I think,
exactly.
God has gifted me in certain ways, but just realizing that, again, that, yeah, that God wasn't sitting up there thinking, man, he better not stop teaching,
Yeah,
like he had this open, that. And so, feeling that freedom, again, I think that is something, especially for older writers, or, we have a lot more obligations and response if we don't start it, like, as a graduate or as an undergraduate. We have kids, we have jobs, we
right.
have, and to feel, again, like, this obligation that, like, is it really right for me to take the time to sit down and write something that I just want to write?
Right.
There's a block of self-imposed obligation that a lot of us put on ourselves, and it feels selfish, and it feels like it's wasting time, but it really isn't.
It really isn't. No.
So,
Especially when it brings joy and love to yourself that people, whether you talk to them or not, they feel it. And
mhm,
it does make a difference. Well, let me ask you, as far as like editing,
mhm,
um, this is where, just in my short journey with writing, it always kind of confused me a little bit on what to expect. Now, if you would maybe explain different packages, because at one point, as an example for me, I thought when I sent it off to an editor, they were pretty much going to check my spelling and my grammar and things like that. But in another sense, they didn't rewrite what I wrote, but
mhm,
they gave suggestions on how to uh, say something better.
mhm,
I know at one point it was actually what they had suggested changed what I was trying to do.
mm,
Um, and so I ended up not going with that edit. But that's where
mhm.
I think I sometimes got confused. Tell me what you know about that and what you suggest.
Yeah, there are a lot of kind of routes for getting your work edited, and most of my experience has been through like the freelance option. But I would say, kind of on that note, outside of freelance, and then I'll get into freelance, because that's probably what I would suggest.
Okay.
If you want more control over it, if you're trying to send your work to an actual publishing company, or and edit it and publish it through that company, they're going to edit it, and they have a lot more considerations than what you want, and your story. So, they're going to be thinking not only about like the line edits of commas and punctuation and wording, but they're going to be thinking of like sort of the content of their publishing house,
Right.
and what would sell, and even just like they have an editing guide, a style guide that they have to follow. Even smaller companies,
Okay.
um, have specific things. So if it's, you know again, simple stuff of, font, and whether or not, you can have a word go from one line on a page and a hyphen to another line, so like silly stuff like that, where, again, if it's a publishing house, they want everything to look the same from
Very
book to
exciting.
book. So, you know there's if you're going through a publishing house or something like that, then you just have to expect that they're going to be editing with that in mind. If you are going through a freelance editor, then you have a lot more power to sort of negotiate that relationship, because they are coming on contractually. You're developing the contract, so um, you can, and understanding what you're asking for. So if you're looking for a copy editor, right, that's, or a line editor, like those are the ones who, if put out a work order or a work request on a place like Upwork, which is where I am, um, and I see that, I understand that to mean they are just looking for line by line punctuation, wording, editing. They're
Okay.
looking for me to edit their copy. They
Okay.
have something already done. But then you get a lot of work orders in as well that are, more collaborative, kind of like what your experience was, where they're looking for someone to review, and they're they're writing. Even sometimes they're asking for someone to take what they've kind of had and rewrite it, or take an outline and write it. So there's a there's a large sort of spectrum for what editors are willing to do.
So
And
is that last one that you just said kind of what they talk about ghostwriting?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And again, I think that's the value of going freelance is you have the opportunity to negotiate that relationship. So whenever I take on an freelance editing role, my first, and I can only speak for myself, but like my first job is to understand what the client wants. And so we just, before we even look at the writing, even though they have a job description, and they've accepted me based on, my proposal for that job description, we sit and have a 30-minute conversation about, time constraints, plans like that, but also like what do you want? And that's when you have the opportunity to be like, I've already got something, I really just need you to line edit. But if you see something that doesn't make sense, let me know, because
Right.
obviously, don't hide that from me, so like that can be something you say, or it can be, I've got these thoughts and I need someone to help me write it. And
Right.
again, not everybody's willing to do that. But again, with freelance work, if you post it, people who are going to respond are going to be the people who are willing to kind of work with you. So
Okay.
if you post something and say, I need a ghostwriter, or I need someone who's going to help me write from an outline or from my notes, you get a lot of like memoir requests where, there's people who are wanting to write memoirs, and they have all these journals or all these notes, and they're just,
That's what I got.
yeah, and they need help
Sorry.
compiling them. And the best jobs like say that. They say, I have these things, and again, either I want you to take them and ghostwrite them, or I need help writing them,
Right.
and if you're clear on that, the people who respond to your job post are going to understand that, and be willing to do that. So that's why I like freelance, because again, it allows you the options to really negotiate the relationship.
Well, and for me, I like a variety of things to do. So that kind of, I don't know, is that something that you like? Like, you can just edit, or you can ghostwrite, or you can do somewhere in between. I
Yeah,
mean,
that is, yeah,
interesting.
especially as a freelance editor, yes, that is definitely the advantage. Again, like, so yeah, going on the other side to, uh, you know, editing for a publishing house, like there's just this consistency, right? Like
Right.
you're going to be given work, and it's going to be constant, and you really don't have, I mean, you don't really have to think about it as much. You know the
Exactly.
relationship, and it's expected. So there is some benefit and value in that. I think the pro of freelance editing is the variety and the ability to like negotiate work time, and just be really really flexible. I can work from anywhere, and
Right.
at any time. So I do like that personal aspect too. Again, like, if you're working for a publishing house, you're probably not going to ever talk to the writer.
Right.
So, and I come from like a writing tutoring background where, I tutored writing in undergrad, and I taught writing for 4 years. And now my job is tutoring writing. So I am much more of a collaborative, like, let's talk about your writing. Let's talk about what you want. Let's talk about the story you want to tell. And,
Right.
how can I be a part of telling that story? So,
So, for people that, um, either they have just jumped in and started compiling some things, or they're thinking about it, what if they came to you, or a freelance editor writer, um, where would they go from there? I know Hasmark Publishing, which is where I went, was a
hmm
vanity publisher
hmm
versus uh, a maybe a publisher where you have to send them your manuscript and get approved if they were
hmm
willing to
hmm hmm
print your book.
hmm
And Amazon has a lot of, what would I guess it depends on the person, but if
Mhm.
someone who is new to this and they went to you for editing, what would their next step be?
So next step after we've worked together and kind of developed some draft that they want to
Yes.
um yeah, again, there's a lot. I would tend to lean towards Amazon,
Okay.
because it's pretty. I, I've I've I have a couple of friends who have published through them,
Hmm.
and had pretty good experiences. Again, that one is, it's very self-driven. So
Right.
they have, editors that if you want to pay another fee for, as part of your publishing deal with them, they are willing to do that. But like, the base plan
It's
is
pretty
pretty simple, and you have a um, you have a built-in distribution and
distribution.
marketing where, um, and what I really like about Amazon, and this might be true for Hasmark and some of the other vanity publishers as well, is you don't have to pay for a 30 copies of the book or whatever.
Right.
What's really great about Amazon is if you publish something with them, they have the the draft, they have the template of your work, and it just stays there. And then when someone hits buy and pays for it, it gets made, and
Right.
so you're never, overpaying for a bunch of copies of a book that you then have to worry about selling yourself.
Or putting in
So
your garage.
right, or putting in your garage and giving away, at Christmas, and you know, sliding into used bookstores, going in,
Right.
putting them on in the display. Oh, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So there's, yeah, I I haven't. Now again, I have pretty limited. I'll just season this with, I have pretty limited experience with self-publishing, but the people who have done it, um, I haven't heard. I'm sure there are horror stories with working with Amazon as well as any other
Oh, I'm
place,
sure with
but
all everyone.
yeah. But the two particularly people who one was a historian who actually like wrote a history, like nonfiction book, and another one was an author who wrote a children's book.
Oh, neat.
And so yeah, and that's another thing. Amazon's is willing to publish anything, right? You don't have to go find a publisher that's like, you know, does that sort of
That sort of thing.
style. So yeah.
Well, that's good because I think some people like to have a plan. And in order for them to maybe take that leap of faith, they kind of have to, in their mind, think, okay, baby step one is this, step two is this, and we just go there,
Yeah, and
you
I
know.
would put a step before self-publishing, because self-publishing is a pretty large financial commitment depending on how
Right.
long your book is. So there are a lot of like free ways to publish your work, and
Okay.
I mean, again, depending on if you're trying to publish a novel, some of these aren't as helpful. But there are a couple of like online just hosting sites that you can upload your novel, and people can read for free, and you can get
Okay.
feedback from, more in terms of short story, or creative nonfiction. You can always consider using one of the like WordPress or Odyssey to create a blog and post your
Okay.
work there. um,
Okay.
so yes, especially if writers are just starting out, I don't think, um, for most people, like self-publishing should not be the first way that you publish your work. Because, and this is something I'll talk about maybe a little later, is you need to you need to get your writing out there a lot before you start figuring out what kind of writing you're about, and
Oh,
what kind of writing you do and how you do it. Um, I've been listening to a podcast called Start With This, which I recommend, and I will recommend again in this conversation. But what their first episode is called Idea to Execution, and it's the idea that most especially starting creative writers harbor their ideas, and
yes,
they kind of hoard them, and maybe they write them down in a notebook, and maybe they write them on a Word document. I've got mine on a Google Drive, and on my phone.
right.
But so you have an idea, and then like they just that most writers will never execute those. They'll piddle around with one, then they'll piddle around with the other, and then they'll
Okay.
just kind of go both back and forth. And again, it's that barrier of actually getting your work out there,
Work out there.
and just recognizing that getting your work out there, publishing it in some way, is part of the process of refining it. And so they had I don't know if they had the analogy, but analogy that I thought of in my head was, a sports analogy. If you are practicing a free throw shot, right? Um,
Right.
and you don't shoot the ball until you are absolutely certain that it's going to go in, then you're never going to shoot
Trying
the
to shoot
ball,
the ball.
right?
Oh, I
And
like that.
so same idea, if you don't publish your work until you're absolutely certain that it's going to be well received, or that it's the way that you want it, you're never going to publish your work, and you're never going to figure out, again, like you shoot the shot and you recognize, that was off the backboard, that was too low, that was to the right, that was to the left. From the effect of the shot, you know what to do better, and
Right.
then you shoot another one, then you shoot another one. Same idea, from you publishing your work, the reception of it, um, even if it's just doing a reading to your family, that, or your friends,
Gotcha.
giving it to a writing group. That's how you develop your style as a writer. Is oh, that didn't really work the way that I wanted it to, and so let me try this again.
Right.
And so I think that those are, a lot more accessible steps, where
Okay.
again, you're not risking, a bunch of money in the process right away.
Mm-hmm.
You're just, saying, this is the story I'm telling, and this is how I'm telling it. And then when you hone that in, if again, maybe that's all you do, and that's the process that gives you joy, and that it kind of feeds that creative writing instinct. Maybe you don't need to do more than publish it in a blog, or but then if you want to try to actually publish it in a more formal way where you're monetizing it, right, then
Right.
you can make that decision with a little bit more confidence.
That's very good. I appreciate that, because I do know not everybody's goal is to publish a book or whatever. Some people are they have a story that maybe they want to share with their kids and grandkids, to make sure that they know about their great 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 grandfather or
Yeah.
something.
Mhm.
So who so if a person I've been working with big brothers and big sisters on getting to encourage creativity with
Mm.
their what they call the littles, the
Mhm, mhm.
um, and they don't always have a network of maybe people that they completely trust.
Mm.
um, and there's other people, adults too, that just may have that fear of not wanting to open that book and show. um, would that be something that you would do as well? Like, for instance, not uh, creative writing and not editing, but um, sometimes it's easier to give your work to someone that you don't know,
Mhm.
and more of a, I'm not sure what you would call that, like give me a
S
critique of my work,
Feedback, yeah, and
Bill.
critique. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I and many other freelance editors would be willing to do.
Okay.
Again, you would have to, um, maybe just for, your own, if someone's doing that just for your own good and protection, like you would need to be really clear about what you wanted and what you were expecting from that editor, even
Okay.
even just to avoid miscommunication.
Right.
Because are you, and that's what I like about Upwork specifically, because you can determine, are you paying them by the hour, are you paying them a flat rate for the entire thing. And so, it's particularly if you're paying them by the hour, if you agree to that, then make sure, especially if it's just a, hey, read this and give me your feedback, that
Right.
it's like, I'm expecting that you read this in 2 to 3 hours, or,
Okay. Yeah.
because there are probably nefarious people out there who would try to, extort, that out of you. And then there are some who would just, maybe misunderstand and say, okay, I'm going to track how long I read this. And maybe they read really slowly, and particularly maybe they're taking lots of notes, right? And then they give you a bill for 20 hours and you're like, whoa, like
Right.
this is a 50-page short story. Why did it take you 20 hours to read this? Right. So
Exactly.
like, if you are looking for a more informal critique of your work,
Mm-hmm.
then make sure you are being really formal about
Okay.
the financial expectations and like the
Gotcha.
job itself, because the more informal you are, um, the more likely there is just to be misunderstanding.
Right. That's great advice. I know there were different packages that you can do, and uh, but yeah, clear communication and a contract. Um, and so if let's see if I had you've given us so much good information, Phil. I so appreciate it.
Well, yeah.
I've learned a lot myself too. Um, so we've talked about getting. Oh, cool. I didn't get. We want to talk about getting a hold of you because I think
Sure. Hmm.
a lot of the things that you just said, if even if you want to give it to somebody that you don't know just because you don't want family and friends to see it, it still has to be someone that might be recommended and
Hmm.
uh, your friend or myself trusts them. It gives them
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
added
Hmm.
confidence that you
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
things will be done as they say that they will be done. So how do we get a hold of you and just
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share my screen again, just give
okay.
you some of my contact information. So yeah, probably the easiest way is just to shoot me an email.
Okay.
So that is, the email that you can find me at my Gmail. I do have an account with Upwork, which is
Okay.
a freelancing, website where both people who are like me, who are looking for jobs, and people who are looking to have jobs met, can kind of meet. It's an open
Okay.
source. It's kind of, again, Upwork's nice because it's a very open platform,
Okay.
and so you don't have to. You can post any job and anybody can accept it. So in some ways it's like the wild wild west, in that, like, I have accepted jobs that I have, luckily, after I've looked at them and tried to start working with them, before I did any work, that they were scams, like, so people can kind of get on that way. But you can find me on Upwork. I've got a picture on my profile that, looks like me. So, and you can direct message me there or direct message me on Facebook.
On the
Um,
Facebook.
so probably if you really want to make sure, if you've got something that, I'd really like Philip to look at this, or to work with Philip, then, directly emailing me would be the best way to go.
That way.
So yeah,
Okay,
that's
great.
all my good stuff.